So you'll be on the internet if you ask any difficult questions. Fantastic. Just shut the door.
Maria might be coming shortly. She's rung me, so she's looking.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, welcome to our maths afternoon. The idea of this is really is listen to parent feedback that the way that we teach maths is very different from the way that I was taught at school, and it really was. And actually teachers generally have changed massively, I would say. Maths lessons to me used to be take your books out, page 26, open it up, start at the top and work down, and when you finish that page, go to page 27, nobody talks. And then you had a big queue to go and see the teacher. It was very much column addition and column subtraction. I don't know if you remember all of these things. And actually in lower schools it's very, very different from that. And the idea this afternoon is really just to give you an insight into the way that we teach maths. It's not going to turn you into maths teachers, okay? And at the end I will just go through the things you can do at home, which would be really helpful. And there's health warnings for things that I would respectfully ask you not to do at home with your children, because that could actually damage the way that they actually approach their maths. So, why is maths important? I found this on YouTube very late last night. So, this is why maths is important. So if there was ever a reason to get your numbers right, that would be a good reason. Fantastic. And it's really interesting. Obviously, I coach one of the football teams, got Mr. Donovan there coaching another team. It's quite good that the children can't quite add up yet, because when we do the scores at the end of the match, they only scored 5 goals, and I'm happy with that. So they didn't score the 7 or the 9s they actually really did. But all joking aside, maths is really important. It is quite an abstract subject. And what I mean by that is, if we had 2 add 3, if that was words and that was a cat is a cat, put them together and it's a cat. 2 add 3 is 5. Okay, so suddenly we're putting things together and they change. So that in itself is very different from the way that we're teaching reading or anything like that. Let's rub that off. So when I've been teaching previously, and the classes I cover now, I would always say to the children, this is what we're going to cover this afternoon. If you have a pair of numbers, there is 4 things you can do with that pair of numbers. Okay, so there is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And they're the operations which we will cover this afternoon. We won't do data collection, drawing graphs, we're not going to do shape, we won't do coordinates or anything else. But it is those 4 key operations which will go with your child through the whole of their education and into their working life as well. I'd like to thank Mrs. Green and Mrs. Bennett, who's going to present on those this afternoon, and I'll hand over to them very shortly. Have I missed anything out?
No.
I haven't, fantastic. But you will see we're going to take each of those operations in turn, and we'll take you from the very basics, and then you'll see how that progresses as the children move through school. So I'll hand you over to Mrs. Bennett. Oh no, Mrs. Green.
Maria's just
Possibly
arrived.
something just outside
Okay.
the door.
So, Mrs. Green.
Thank you.
I'll come
Well,
up here.
Mr. Tubner, having said we're thinking about all the 4 operations, I'm actually going to start with early counting. Because fundamental to carrying out any of those operations is actually the early counting work that the children will do in the foundation stage. And I've been coached here slightly by Mrs. Horrobin on what to say and what to include. And she said, we do things like, we do lots of counting. I mean, obviously the children are going to do lots of counting rhymes. They do lots of exploration with counting. They will be inside, they will be outside. They will be using counting at every opportunity because they're investigating, they're experimenting, and we want them to do that so that they really get that understanding. Did I miss anything in that? Great. Just want to show you the important thing about counting, though, first of all, because a lot of children have difficulties in what we call one-to-one correspondence. So if we say to them, dinosaurs are alive, if we say to them, right, can you count these? They will often just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and miss some out or count one twice. So we're looking at, hopefully, them doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Thank you very much. They're all on there. Because if they can't do that, when we carry on to starting to use things like number lines and things that we're going to explain later, then they won't actually hit all of those numbers. They will make jumps, they will make errors. So one-to-one correspondence is really, really important to start with. And that's my little bit on counting. Thank you. Right.
Yeah. Okay, place value is really, really important. You might have heard your children come home and say, we've been doing place value today, and you're thinking, what on earth is place value? Unless children understand place value, they cannot do any of these operations. And what place value basically is understanding in this number what that 1 is, what that 5 is, what that 2 is, and understanding where that is in the number system. Obviously the younger children won't be doing that with 3-digit numbers. They'll be wanting to understand where does 16 come in the number system. To understand 16 comes after 15, comes before 17, to have that understanding where its place is. Also, to understand that that is not a 1, we never say that that is a 1, that is actually 100. To understand that that is not a 5, to understand it's a 50, and to understand that it's a 2, and have the image as well in their heads of what 100 is, how many 100 is, and how that relates to how many 50 is, and how many 2 is. So we do say hundreds, tens and ones, or sometimes we say units as well. And that's really important that children understand place value. And they understand if they've got 152, what's 10 more, what's 10 less. They understand where their place is. Also, Mrs. Green said about early counting, we don't stop counting, we count in every single lesson in the whole school. When they're in year 4, they count in decimals, so they count in fractions, they count looking at a thermometer in the negative numbers, but we must always be counting, because that helps to develop the place value understanding, and until children understand that, they cannot do anything. Partitioning. Children love partitioning, and they might have come home and said, we're doing partitioning, and you think, what on earth is partitioning? We do lots and lots of partitioning because lots of the operations we do are based on partitioning. And partitioning is basically, I've got 34, and I'm going to partition it into 10s and 1s. And again, it's having that image in our head. So I know that this there, that is not a 3, it's a 30. And so we're going to partition, and we can have 34, 34, and we know that 30 add 4 is the same as 34. And so we do an awful lot of that, starting with 2-digit numbers, going on to 3-digit numbers, and then the older children, year 4, 4-digit numbers. Word of warning though, teens numbers are really difficult. You might think learning numbers to 20 would be first, but actually teens numbers are horrible and really difficult to understand. 25 is easy because we've got 20. 5. 37 is easy because we've got 30. 7. 16 is horrible because we don't have 16. It should be really teen 6, but it's not. So children find teens numbers really hard to understand. So if your children are struggling with this and you think, hang on, that's not right, it's quite a low number, a teen number, don't worry, that's absolutely fine. They need to understand that 16 is 1 10 and 6 1s. And us as adults find it hard to understand why they find it so hard, but they really do. Children find teens numbers really hard to understand, and so they have to understand that it's 1 10 and 6 1s. And until they've got that understanding, again, they can't do that. So teens numbers are really difficult for children. Now Mrs. Green's going to talk to you all about adding.